Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Hopefully you're having a wonderful day. I am popping in today with a card inspired by a technique that I saw Mindy Egan do from Mindy Egan Design over on her YouTube channel. And so I wanted to test this out because I actually have some products that I hadn't used before that I wanted to try out. So I'm just starting out here with an A2 size card base. So this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I am blending on some I am blending on some Blueprint Sketch Distress Oxide ink just around the outer edges of the panel. And I am using my Waffle Flower water media mat to hold my cardstock while I do my blending. I find that the mini media mat actually works really well to hold everything in place. And so I prefer to use that rather than just blending onto my glass work surface. I do have the larger media mat, and that works well also because it will hold your inks in place as well. So either one is fine. It's just I like the little one because it doesn't take up as much space. And I apologize. I started this card and realized that I had some products that I needed to grab that were on the other side of my room, and I had my camera plugged in, and so when I got up to go grab those things, my camera got shifted a little bit. And I will get it adjusted here shortly. So I'm a little off camera, but yeah, just wanted to mention that. So now I am blending on, I believe this is Broken China Distress Oxide ink, blending that sort of from the center, not from the outer edges, but more towards the center. And I am blending out in a couple places towards the outer edge, just for a little variation. And I'm not trying to get a completely even blend here, so I will go back and smooth some of that out. And then in the inner white space, I am now blending on some Salvage Patina Distress Oxide ink. So the combination of the three, and I'm just going to go through and try to get a smooth blend. And I'll go back through the colors again to try to fill in some of that blotchiness and darken my color in some places. And truly for this technique, your blend doesn't have to be perfect. Anything will work well for this technique because you're going to end up covering it up with stamping and some other things. So don't worry about how perfect your blend is. Just get some good base color on there and then go back over it a couple times and kind of smooth it out. And as you can see, it looks pretty blotchy. I'm not going for perfection here at all. But I just want to get some different colors in there and get them mixed around. And I am using, I believe these are Tailored Expressions blending brushes. I purchased those quite a while back, but I also have some just generic blending brushes that I got from Amazon, and those work just as well, truthfully. So don't ever feel like you have to buy all of the products and stuff that you see different designers and things using, because you certainly can buy things off of Amazon or even buy things from Walmart that work just as well for your crafting. And I would actually encourage people to do that, is to go to Amazon if you're not, if you don't care where your products come from necessarily, and if you're on a budget, obviously Amazon is a good alternative for finding things that you can use for your crafting. So now that I've got this blended, I'm going to go ahead and heat set that ink just because it does stay wet a little bit longer, the Distress Oxides. And then I'm going to add on some anti-static powder, and I'm going to make sure I brush that on evenly throughout the whole card panel. And now I have my, this is the MFT stamp, and it's called Christmas Background. It's basically just a word background. So I'm going to ink that up with some Altier, I believe this is called Shark Tooth ink. It is a white, it's a water reactive ink. So I'm just stamping that on, and I actually put it in my panel, and then I stuck my cardstock to my door. So I'm kind of doing the reverse in my Misty, trying to get a clean impression. And then I'm going to take this off, and I'm also going to heat set that as well because this ink does stay wet also. And I want to make sure it's perfectly dry before I move on. So now I have my Gina K set here. And I am going to stamp these with some embossing ink. I'm going to stamp them one at a time. I'm just placing them on my card panel, trying to figure out where my other 2 stamps are going to go. And then I'm going to go ahead and condition this stamp a little bit. And then I'm going to add some embossing ink to it. Here I'm just conditioning it with an eraser. You can either use your hand or use an eraser. Either one works well for conditioning your stamps. And I'm going to use some more anti-static powder tool. And I am putting on that embossing ink. And I'll stamp this a couple of times just to make sure I get a clean impression. And then I'm going to sprinkle on, I believe it's Distress Embossing Glaze in Broken China. And this was the product that I had never tried before. It's kind of like an embossing powder, but it's opaque. So when you put it on, and once you heat set it, you can actually see through it. It's just a gorgeous color. So I have that heat set. I'm going to go ahead and put my powder back in my jar here. And then I'll do the same process again, only this time I'm going to use a different color embossing glaze. I'm going to clean off my stamp. And I just use baby wipes to clean off my stamps. I buy the Natural Care baby wipes and they work just as well. So I'm going to put my card panel back in my MISTI. And I'm a little off camera here, but I'm stamping in that lower right corner with the smallest stamp from the set. I believe that's the smallest stamp from the set. Yes. Using the smallest stamp from the set, and again I'm conditioning the stamp. And then I'm going to just ink it up with some embossing ink. And this time I am sprinkling on, it'll be Salvaged Patina Distress Embossing Glaze. And these match the same colors that I used for the for my inking. So it's all stamped. I'm going to sprinkle on the embossing glaze. And these colors are just gorgeous. I mean, it really doesn't do it justice. When you see them in real life, they're very pretty. And I think the Salvage Patina, more than the others, was very opaque, so you could definitely see the printed words behind it. And it's such a cool technique. It looks really awesome in person. So going through the same process. And then for my final stamp, which is actually the largest stamp in the set, and it actually has the little, I guess, spot to put your sentiment in it. So I'm only going to stamp the bottom half of it, and I will put that at the top. So I'm only going to stamp the bottom half, and you won't even notice that the little word space for the sentiment is not there. We're just going to leave that off. I was thinking that this would be a really cool technique to do to make Christmas cards, or not Christmas cards, Christmas ornaments. If you had the matching die set to cut them out, you could do 2 of them, back to back, and glue them together and make really pretty Christmas ornaments, or even Christmas tags with them. So that's another thought. If you didn't want to do a full Christmas card set, you could just do gift tags with them. And again, this would work with a number of stamp sets, like the Tim Holtz stamp set. This would work perfectly. You could do the same technique, gift tags or cards, using that Christmas stamp set. Making sure I got a clean impression with this, and I had to ink this one a couple of times. It was kind of hard to get it inked up, probably because it was half on the cardstock and half off. Eventually I get it. So I'm going to sprinkle on my final embossing glaze, which is blue prize ribbon. and it's a gorgeous dark color. It's the only one of the three that really isn't very opaque. Not like the other two at least, but I still like the look of it. It looks so cool. And then for my sentiment, I am using the Waffle Flowers set called Wonderful Christmas. I believe this came out last year. I'm really not sure when this release came out. But it's a great set. It has multiple Christmas sentiments that you can use, and the coordinating die cuts the whole sentiment, so all the words, it cuts out everything. And I am stamping that onto some just vellum, and I am heat embossing with some Simon Says stamp. I believe this is navy embossing powder. My original thought was to just have the vellum directly onto my card panel, but I realized that my card panel being as dark as it is, the vellum sort of gets lost. So I ended up die cutting out the vellum, and then I'm going to die cut a white cardstock from the same die. I'm going to use the same die, just cut the same outline from some white cardstock, and I'm going to back that on my vellum. So it'll give it a little bit more brightness and help it show up on my card panel. So I am die cutting that. And here is my die cut outline. And you can see how much brighter it really makes it stand out. I mean, ideally I probably could have just heat embossed my sentiment on some white cardstock. And I kind of like the look of the vellum. And I just added a little bit of liquid glue behind the letters here, and I'll just glue that to my panel. I think the vellum looks good. It still tones down the whiteness a little bit. I didn't have anything heavy on my desk, so I just layered up my ink pads to sit on top of that and let that dry a little bit. Next I pulled out some blue cardstock. This is the matte blue. It's sort of got a foil to it. I honestly don't know where this came from. I think it might have come from a set that I purchased, or a kit. So it could possibly be a Simon Says stamp. I'm really not sure. I literally pulled this out of my stash. So I'm going to cut this with I believe I'm going to use a Dynamics. It's an MFT Dynamics set that I have had forever, and I believe in fact that they don't carry this anymore, and I'm just die cutting that, and I'm going to just basically die cut it with this large scallop frame, which I think looks really nice. And then I'm going to die cut my blue cardstock to be A2 size, and then next I'm going to add a little white gouache paint to an acrylic block, and some, I believe I used some Perfect Pearls and some water, and I just sprayed that on there as well for a little bit of shimmer. I want to mix that together with my paintbrush, and then I'm going to splatter this background. And I had to add a little bit more water. The paint was pretty thick. I added a little bit more water, and then I'm just gonna tap that on. And it doesn't matter, even though I put down a piece of white paper, I still managed to get paint splatters everywhere, all over my desk, everywhere. So I had to clean that up. I probably could have actually put more on, but I was getting some big drops, and I didn't really want too many big drops on my panel. So I just sprinkled on a little bit more. And then once I was done, I heat set that a little bit, tried to clean up my work surface. Next I used some dimensional foam on the back of my panel, and I matted that to my blue cardstock. I ended up using my Score Pal, and that way I can get it lined up fairly straight. Just putting that on there. I'm going to remove the foam tape here. I generally try to remove one or two strips, and then I leave the third one until I'm sure that I have it fairly straight. Get that lined up. Try again. Usually takes me one or two tries to get it lined up perfectly straight, but once I've got it, then I can remove the extra strip of tape and make sure everything is secure. And then I will add this to a card base, A2 size card base that is cut from some 110 pound Neenah solar white cardstock. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make sure I burnish this card edge so that it folds nicely. And then I'm going to line it up again in my score pal and add my card panel to it. Nice thing is I don't have to worry too much about it being straight since it's edge to edge with the blue cardstock, the dark blue cardstock. And I'm just going to add on my sentiment with a little bit of dimensional foam. Once I have that in place, I will go ahead and adhere it down, and then make sure it's stuck down really well. And for my finishing touch, I'm going to add some dark blue pearls to this. I believe these are Trinity Stamps pearls, which I really like their pearls. And they're sort of an iridescent blue, so they work really well with this card panel. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed today's card. Please click the like and subscribe button to be notified every time I post a video. Thank you.